started just now as well. Okay, so now let us move on to in the last class we have discussed about unicellular and multicellular organism as well as the cell theory. Okay, so we have seen that cell is a basic and functional unit of life. Okay, and the cell arises from the pre-existing cell. So these are some of the factors that is important aspects of a cell theory we are seeing. So now moving on to the shape of a cell. So a cell can exist in any shape. Okay, but in general, there is a limitation of shapes for certain organisms. For example, like bacteria, we have very limited number of shapes for the bacteria. The reason is the bacteria is being provided with a rigid cell wall is present. So because of the presence of cell wall, they have to take up only a specified shape during their course of life. Okay, based on that, broadly we have three different types of shapes. One is a cocci, that is spherical in shape. Okay, if it is a cocci, if a bacteria is named as a cocci, it will be mostly having a spherical shape in its cell structure, cell shape. Whereas the rods that are bacilli, otherwise called as bacilli, so this rod cells will have a shape of rod-like shape that you can see in this figure. Okay, so in case of cocci, sorry. So in cocci, this is a round shape. So all the cocci, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, in the name, if there is a coccus, mostly it would be a spherical shaped bacteria. And this cocci the spherical shaped bacteria can be exist as individual cells, individual round shaped, as well as they can be in a chains. Okay, if it is in a chains, they are called as Streptococcus. The name is called as Streptococcus if they are in chains, and if they are in clumps, group of cell round shaped cells like this, they are called as Staphylococcus. Okay, and if they are individual cells like this, like if you have a two cells attached together like this kind of a shape, they are called as like we don't have any specific name for them, but in general the bacteria called Micrococcus or the Streptococcus pneumonia, they have this kind of a shape, that is two cocci will be attached together, otherwise they are called as diplococci because they have two cocci, so they are called as diplococci if the shapes are like this. Okay, so the cocci bacteria is a spherical shaped bacteria, and next category we are going to see is rod shaped bacteria. The rod shaped or otherwise called as bacilli. If you have anywhere the name called as bacilli, the bacteria will have only the rod shape. Examples of bacilli, you all well know that the curd which contains the lactobacillus, which is a rod shaped bacteria, and the E. coli, the most known, well studied example in a bacterial family, bacterial kingdom is the E. coli bacteria, and it is a rod shaped bacteria. So these are the very well known examples you can remember. The curd bacteria in the curd is lactobacillus, which is a rod shaped, and the E. coli bacteria is again a rod shaped bacteria, as well as the bacillus anthracis. So these are some of the examples of rod shaped bacteria. So if a name indicates bacilli, it is a rod shape. Apart from this two basic shapes, the cocci and the bacilli, because these two are the major shapes we find in the bacterial kingdom. Apart from that, we have some other kind of a shapes like the comma shaped bacteria, that is a Vibrio cholerae bacteria, which has a shape of comma. So it's a kind of a comma shape they have, and this is Vibrio, and the spiral shaped. So they have a kind of a spring-like structure, and that's why they're called as a spiral shaped. The examples are the spirochete and the spiralium. These are the examples. And apart from that, we have some other structures in bacteria, that is actinomycetes, special group of bacteria. They have hyphae-like structure, like it is kind of a the fungal or the mold growth that you see on any decaying or the food items. They have the hyphae structures. So this kind of a structure, but the most common structures are cocci and bacilli, and the third common is this spiral shaped bacteria. Okay, this is with respect to the prokaryotic organism. Now moving on to the eukaryotic organism. Eukaryotic organisms have variety of shapes, and their shapes are influenced by various other factors that we will see in detail in the next slides. So if you look at the shapes of the eukaryotic organism, in case of humans specifically, for example, we are very well aware that human cells we might have studied now and then. Okay, so if you look at the shape, RBC, the red blood cells of your blood will have a spherical or a concave, a convex or concave shape will be seen. Okay, in case of red blood cells, so that shape is retained as it is. And in case of neurons, you have some sort of very complicated structure. So this is a neuronal structure which has a different kind of a pattern. Finger-like projections are present in them. These are the axon. This is axon, and these are dendrites. These are dendrites they have. So based on this, like they have a different morphology they have. And this is cells that are seen in your retina, that is eye cells, and these are called rod cells because the shape appeared to be a rod like structure. And we have white blood cells which keep on changes its structure. It doesn't have any fixed structure in them, and they will be keep on having a different structure depending upon the environment. For example, if they want to squeeze themselves across the blood vessel or the cell lining in your blood vessel, they will squeeze themselves out of this small area. So by the way, they will any shape whatever they want. So the major reason why the animal or the eukaryotic cells they have the different kinds of shapes or that because we do not have a rigid cell wall. Due to the absence of rigid cell wall, our cells can take any shape whatever they want. As in case of this white blood cells, they will change their shape as per the requirement. Okay, if we have a rigid cell wall, it will be quite difficult to have this kind of a fine structures in our cells. Whereas in case of plant cells, if you look at the plant cell, they have a rigid cell wall. So plant cells are very fixed. They have a very fixed shape of in their cell, either rectangular or square shaped, whatever the shape is required. So they have a rigid structure. So they cannot change the shape as like our the animal cells we have, because animal cells they do not have the cell wall. So this is about the some of the basic shapes that we can see in prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So now how the shape is related, like why we need to have these kind of a different shapes, because the shapes are always related to the function. As I said in this slide, if you see, the neurons have an elongated structure. They have a lengthier axons because neurons functions in transmitting the signal from one part of a body to another part. So if the neurons are very small, then there would be a requirement of multiple millions of cells to communicate a signal across a shorter distance. But we have certain neurons which are at the length of meters, which runs from your spinal cord to a specific organ, which are in the length of a single cell would be in a length of a meter. So a single cell would be possibly able to transmit the signal from one part of your body to another part. So in that way, the signal transfer rate will be very efficient. So these are the reason why the function defines the shape of a cell. And in case of this WBC, I said it does not have a fixed shape. Okay, because the reason is they may be required to migrate to any part of your body. So wherever they require, if they want to navigate through the small area, then if they have any kind of a specific shape, it would not be possible. So they are free from any shape and they are able to move anywhere of the body. So this is why the shape is always related to the function of the respective cell. And some cells have dynamic shape. As I said, the white blood cells, they are very dynamic in their shape depending upon the environment where they are, and they try to retain the shape of that particular environment. So in that they have a very dynamic shape, and the cells could be of as we discussed already, could be any shape: spherical, oval, rounded, elongated, cuboidal, cylinder, tubular. So these are the different shapes of cells that we can see. Okay, and what are the factors that are controlling? The first thing is the surface tension and viscosity of the protoplasm. The protoplasm is the content that is present or within the cell membrane. That is the fluid. Okay, that surface tension of that fluid is going to determine the shape of the cell and the mutual pressure of the surrounding cells. In case of this, mutual pressure is applicable to some extent in plants as well as for it is applicable in animals in most of the cases, because in animals that is surrounding cells actually helps to shape any particular cell. Okay, in that way the mutual pressure that are exerted by the surrounding cells can able to give a shape to a cell. And the rigidity of the cell membrane, the more rigid the cell membrane, the structure is fixed. Less rigid the cell membrane, the structure is more fluidic or more dynamic in nature. And the internal environment of the cell as well as the function they are performing are likely to determine what kind of a shape a cell has to take. So this is all about the shape of a cell. Now let us move on to the cell size.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, there will be also mutual pressure of cells in plant cells, but they
yeah, of
never
course.
change.
No, no, that is supported by they have the cell wall. Okay, cell wall is so rigid they are able to retain their pressure whatever it is exerted by the nearby cells, and that's why plants have a rigid cell wall which makes them immobile, or they cannot change their shape as like the animal cells.
I
Doubts we will
also
discuss.
can.
Doubts we'll discuss at the end. Okay, I will just wind up the class around 30 minutes or later, and then we will discuss it later because now the other people might be disturbed. Okay, so we'll discuss at the end. Okay, you note down your questions. We will discuss. Okay. So now moving on to the cell size. If you look at the cell size, uh, a smallest bacteria be around in the size of nanometers. What is shown here. So it would be in case of nanometer, but an average bacterial size will be around 4 to 10 micrometer in range. It could be even bigger. Okay, but in generally it is in the range of like 5, 6, 4 now micrometer it would be. But the smallest bacteria could be of 100, less than or more than 100 nanometer in size. It is very rare this kind of a bacteria to see. Whereas in case of eukaryotic cells, we have vast different size of cells. As I said earlier, that neurons could be a meter length. Okay, so we can visually see these neurons with a naked. This a single neuron can be visualized, but you may not be able to visualize the actual structure of the cellular organelles. But you would be able to visually see this is a neuron which is running, and the chicken eggs, which are a single cell that you could able to see, which has a size in centimeter in like meters, we can able to see. Okay, and in case of frog egg, it is also a kind of visible to human eyes, but it is tough for you to differentiate the nucleus and the cytoplasm and everything. But with the help of microscope, be able to a simple compound microscope will help you to visualize the entire content of this frog cell. And similarly the human eggs are also quite big, but it require a microscope to be visualized. So in that way the cells can be in the range of micrometers to meters. The size varies across the organism, and again the size determines the kind of a function they are likely to have. And the viruses are in the nanometer range, and the chloroplast, mitochondria, or the eukaryotic cellular eukaryotic organisms organelles that we'll see in this detail in when we study about the ultrastructure of cells. So this mitochondria and chloroplast are in the range of 1 micrometer or 2 micrometer, which are the internal parts of our eukaryotic cells. Okay.
So those things we have to memorize the size of the
Uh,
cells.
Size of the cell you have to remember for bacteria and any example few. Okay. So now going on to the cell, we have seen about the cell shape as well as cell size. Okay, so now we are going to see about the cell classification. Before we are going to look into the organisms, how we have already seen how the organisms are classified. So we had them like kingdoms: Monera, Protista, Plantae, Animalia, and Fungi. So these are the 5 different kingdoms. That is based upon the organism structure and other things. But now we will see only about the two broad types of cells we have. Whatever the cells we take, that the cells can be classified only into two different types, that is prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cell. So the prokaryotic cells are the bacteria are the well example for the prokaryotic cells, and the eukaryotic cells are present in fungi, protist, animals, and plants. All the 4 kingdom they have these eukaryotic cells. Okay, so now if you look at these are the two different cells. They have a lot of differences between them, but still they have a lot many similarities between them. So we will see each one of these differences and similarities in detail. Okay, but broadly I will just brief out here what are the differences. If you see the eukaryotic cell, they have an area called nucleus. This area is called as nucleus. This nucleus is not seen in the prokaryotic cells. One of the well to be notable differences they have. Here the nucleus is present. Here instead of nucleus, they have a structure called nucleoid, which is not separated by a membrane from cytoplasm. And here the nucleus is separated from the cytoplasm, this area, by a membrane. This is a membrane area, membrane called nuclear membrane. Okay. Within this nuclear membrane area, the nucleus is present, and the nucleus contains a hereditary material of a cell is present over there. And the organelles like mitochondria is not seen in the bacteria. They do not have the mitochondria, and the centrioles, what you see here, are not there. And microtubules are not seen. That we'll see discuss in detail when we study about organelles. The Golgi complex is not here. Lysosomes will not be seen here. So if you look at, there will be too many the organelles, that is mitochondria, Golgi complex, endoplasmic reticulum, and in case of plants, we have the chloroplast, which is not seen in the bacterial system. So in the bacteria, they do not have such internal organelles. Only thing is ribosomes are present in bacteria, and eukaryotic cells also have ribosome, but still they have a structural differences in the ribosome. The composition of the ribosome is different for the bacteria as well as for the eukaryotic cells. And one important aspects we can see only in the prokaryotic cell is a capsule, which will not be seen in the animal cells as well as in the plant cells. And animal cell have a cell membrane. Plant cells, sorry, animal cell, plant cell, fungi, protists, all the protists, they have a cell membrane. Similarly, the bacteria also have a cell membrane uh, that is called as plasma membrane, that we'll see. Okay, so these are some of the similarities and differences. Cell wall is seen in all the bacteria, but in case of eukaryotic cells, cell wall is seen only in plants and fungi, as well as in certain protists we can able to see the cell wall. Animals, they do not have the cell wall. Okay, so these are some of the differences and similarities between this prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. And now let us have a brief differences, the meaning of prokaryote, eukaryote. That is, pro means before, so that is why the karyote means a nucleus. So it is a very well the first form nucleus. So that is why it is called as a prokaryotes. And eukaryotes mean after. That's U means after, and karyon means nucleus. So it means it is formed after the formation of prokaryote. So that's why it is called as an eukaryote. And the differences, it is of 1.5 billion years old, and it is more than 3.5 billion years old, and one of the oldest or the primitive organism already. And the size we have discussed already. Prokaryotes are smaller and eukaryotes are larger, and the range is given here. And prokaryotes are mostly unicellular, and very few bacteria, they tend to exist in a group. Otherwise they are mostly unicellular organism. Whereas in case of eukaryotes, except protist, all the eukaryotic organisms are multicellular in nature. And the organelles, the membrane bound organelles are absent in prokaryotes, and there are certain exceptions are there that we will see later. And eukaryotes, all the organelles are present. Location of the genetic information, that is the DNA. As I said in the previous slide, in case of eukaryotes, it is seen in the nucleus, which is enclosed by a membrane. In case of bacteria, that's prokaryotes, that do not have such kind of specialized membrane enclosed structure. So it is there in the cytoplasm form of nucleoid region. DNA structure also has a difference. In case of prokaryotes, single circular DNA will be seen. The DNA will be form of a circular structure, whereas in case of eukaryotes, no such circular structure of DNA is seen. The DNA will be in the form of threads or chromosomes. A reproductive strategy, prokaryotes, that is bacteria, they always undergo asexual reproduction. And in case of eukaryotes, we can see both asexual as well as a sexual mode of reproduction. But the difference is eukaryotes can undergo sexual reproduction, whereas the prokaryotes cannot. Okay, and oxygen requirement, all the eukaryotic organism, they require oxygen for the growth and development, whereas in case of bacteria, that is the prokaryotes, some may require oxygen, some may not require oxygen, and some bacteria, they thrive in both presence as well as in the absence of oxygen. So based on that, they are called as anaerobic if they doesn't require oxygen, aerobic if they require for the oxygen for the growth and development, so they are called as aerobic. And that is a very major difference seen in the process called transcription. So transcription, we will see in detail what it is in the when we read about the central dogma of molecular biology. So during that moment, I will discuss about this prokaryotic and eukaryotic transcription differences. So now I will skip this slide. If you look at the relationship or the how the eukaryotic cells have evolved from the prokaryotes. So it was earlier believed that the prokaryote cells, we know that it is in the form of bacteria, Those are called the prokaryotes, and they were the first life to form on the earth. And that's the reason why I always used to point them as a primitive, because primitive means they were the very oldest form of life on our earth. And it is estimated, already I told you, that it is about 1.335 billion, sorry, it's about 3.5 billion years ago, it be the age of, or this would have been formed. And it is only recently to 1.5 to 2 billion years the eukaryotic cells might have formed. So if you look at the historical the events, like it has been estimated that 4.6 billion ago our earth was formed. And after the earth was formed, due to that like the origin of organism, you all know that soup theory, so where the different chemicals subjected to extreme climatic conditions, and it has given rise to various biomolecules like the protein, DNA, and the RNA, or they have formed. And later they gave rise to a the primitive form of life called the prokaryotic bacteria has formed, from which, and then it give rise to the eukaryotic cells. And after which the origin of that eukaryotic cells, the protist organism, that amoeba, those all would be the oldest form of prokaryotic eukaryotic cells that we see today. And after that only we might have the humans, higher eukaryotic organisms might have been evolved. So our ancestors, like the bacteria and the eukaryotic protist, might more than like they will be close to 3 or 3.5 billion years age they would be. And now we have seen about the classification of cells. We call them as a prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Now within the prokaryotes, there is a small system of, I won't go in detail about the system of classification. I will just tell you on what all the basis and what is the future that makes them distinguishable. Okay, so that we will see. It is the classification is basically the most accepted classification is the Berge's Manual of Determinative Bacteriology. And in 1994 he has proposed a different ways a bacteria can be classified for their identification. So the first category they use is morphology. Already we have seen that bacteria has different shapes, but in general they have two broad shapes, that is rods and the cocci. Rods are nothing but bacilli. Okay, so based on this we can able to classify the bacteria into two different groups. And next category is a Gram stain. It is a kind of a staining procedure. To visualize the bacteria, we can able to stain them. Okay, so in this staining procedure we are able to differentiate the bacteria into two different categories, that is gram positive and gram negative. We will see in the slides detailedly what is gram positive and what is gram negative. And next we can able to classify them based upon their ability to move, as well as other the appendages they have, the structural features they have. So based on which we can able to classify the bacteria, and the physiological features, whether the bacteria can able to perform photosynthesis, or they can able to grow in the presence or absence of oxygen, as well as what kind of nutrition they require for the growth. So based on all these physiological requirements or features, the bacteria can be placed under different categories. So first let us see about this morphology based classification. So the first category I said already, rods and the cocci, spheres are the most common form of bacteria. And the third category is the spirals. Okay, so these are the three different categories, and I have discussed this already there in the shape of the cells. So I will skip this slide. And now coming on to this Gram stain. I said the Gram stain is a staining procedure based on which we can able to differentiate a bacteria into two different categories, that is gram negative and gram positive. Okay, so this gram negative and gram positive. So if you look at this, there is a based upon the difference in the cell wall structure. These two are the cell wall structure of a gram positive and gram negative bacteria. If you look at the gram positive bacteria, there is a thick, this blue layer which is called as peptidoglycan. Okay, this peptidoglycan layer is very thick in case of gram positive bacteria, and this is the cell membrane, that is plasma membrane, okay, which is surrounded by cell wall. So here in gram positive bacteria, they have a very thick peptidoglycan layer. When you compare this peptidoglycan layer with the gram negative bacteria, it has only a thin layer of peptidoglycan. Okay, so this is a major difference they have. And in case of gram negative, they have this additional layer of lipopolysaccharides. In short form, it is called as LPS. Okay, they are called as lipopolysaccharides, which is made up of lipid sugars. Lipid and sugars will be there, so that's why they're called as lipopolysaccharides. And this outermost lipopolysaccharide layer is missing in gram-positive bacteria. So structurally, this is the very basic differences we can able to see between the gram-positive and the gram-negative bacteria. So now let us see how this differences is being able to be recognized by means of gram stain. You know that bacteria, by visualizing them under microscope, we would be unable to know whether the cell is gram positive or gram negative. So to overcome this, a staining procedure was adopted, that is called gram stain. Okay, so because based on this, what we are going to do is, if you have a mixture of bacteria, if you have been provided with a sample which contains both gram
Sir, you are not
Sir,
audible.
you are not audible.
You are not
Sir,
audible.
you are not audible.
Sir को
किसी ने mute कर दिया है?
Audible.
Okay, 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 fine.
Sir, I think you're
Muted, sir.
muted.
Now I'm audible, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now if you have been asked to differentiate, you have been provided with the sample of bacteria, and you have been asked to differentiate whether the cells are gram positive and gram negative. So you know that by visually having a visual inspection, we cannot differentiate them. So we use the procedure gram stain. So first step, what we would do is, first we take out a few drop. We won't take a drop, but actually for your sake of understanding, I'm using a common word of drop, but it cannot be said scientifically. The term drop cannot be used. Okay, we take a few drop of bacteria and we spread them onto a slide. Okay, this is a slide, and here we spread the bacteria. After spreading the bacteria, we stain the bacteria with this crystal violet. So this crystal violet is a dye, which is a purple color dye, which is going to impart the bacteria the purple color, irrespective of gram positive or gram negative. A purple color will be given to the bacteria. Okay, so now what happens is, like both gram positive and gram negative bacteria has taken up the purple color. Next, we apply a solution called iodine, which is a fixative agent. It is going to fix this purple color into the cell, that is this peptidoglycan layer. This purple color, the crystal violet will react with iodine and it will get deposited onto this peptidoglycan, and it is fixed now. So the cell which has the fixed with this peptidoglycan or lipopolysaccharide layer, whatever the layer may be, if the crystal violet reacts with iodine, they will get deposited onto this area and it will be fixed. And now we do an alcohol wash, which is very important here. The reason why the alcohol wash is involved, because these lipids are alcohol soluble.
Sir,
Yeah,
yes, sir, can you repeat the previous step?
yeah, okay. So what I say is, first we applied the crystal violet. After applying the crystal violet, the cells are washed. You wash them to remove the excess stain, and we apply this iodine. Iodine is a fixative to fix the stain into the cellular the components. Okay, so it will fix the stain, and next we wash them with alcohol. The reason why we wash with alcohol is that because this gram negative bacteria has a thick lipopolysaccharide layer. Lipids are alcohol soluble. Okay, so what happens now? The stain, the initially we have used with the crystal violet and the iodine component, the crystal violet and iodine, they react and they get deposited over here. Okay, they are deposited on the lipid layer here, whereas in the gram positive bacteria, they are deposited on the this peptidoglycan layer. Okay, and this peptidoglycan layer is not solubilized by the alcohol because it's a protein and sugar. Protein and sugar cannot be dissolved in alcohol. Okay, so for that reason, this cell remains unaltered. It cannot be, the color or the stain not be removed from this gram positive cell, because this peptidoglycan layer is insoluble or it cannot be washed with alcohol. However, this lipid rich lipopolysaccharide layer can be washed with alcohol. When you wash the cells with alcohol, this entire layer will be ripped off from the cell. And now the gram negative cell only have this thin peptidoglycan layer. Okay, this peptidoglycan layer has taken up any stain, because whatever the stain has deposited on the surface of this lipopolysaccharides are washed off. Now this cell is without any stain. Now we are going to treat them with another stain called safranin. Okay, this is a counter stain. When we do the safranin, already this gram positive bacteria have the crystal violet stain deposited here, so it will not take the safranin. However, this gram negative bacteria now do not have this lipopolysaccharide due to alcohol wash, and now this peptidoglycan is exposed. Because of this exposure, the safranin stain will deposit here. Okay, because of this safranin deposition here, we will able to visualize this gram negative bacteria as pink in color and gram positive as purple color. Okay, so this is how the bacteria will look after the gram stain. This is otherwise called as differential staining. Okay, because we can able to differentiate the gram positive and gram negative bacteria. So for that reason, we call this stain as a differential staining as well as gram staining. And this is how under the microscope, once you perform the differential staining, the bacteria will be looking. So this clusters or this pink color, safranin colors clusters are gram negative bacteria, and these are gram positive bacteria. So based upon now, we can able to classify this back to different way. These are gram positive cocci shaped bacteria, and these are gram negative rod shaped bacteria. Okay, so this could be a bacilli, rod shaped bacilli, or we can say it as a gram positive cocci. So this is how visually with the help of a gram stain we can able to classify the organism into cocci or rod, as well as we can call them as gram positive or gram negative. If you do not follow these three steps, okay, irrespective of the gram positive or gram negative nature of the cell wall, the bacteria will look only purple. Even this rods, it won't look pink, it will look only the purple color if you do follow these three steps again, and this is called as simple staining. If you do only this one step, okay, that staining is called as simple staining. If you follow additionally these three steps, it is called as differential staining or gram staining. Okay, this is all about the classification of prokaryotic cells based upon their cell wall, whether it is gram positive or gram negative. Okay, so this is a simple table which shows a difference, like how a gram positive and gram negative bacteria based upon the cocci as well as the shape of the cell, they can be classified. So a simple, here you can see it is shown as gram positive. It could be a gram positive cocci or gram positive bacilli. Now we are combined two different type of classification system, that is based upon the shape as well as based upon the gram positive nature of the cell wall feature of the bacteria. We can call them as gram
Sir.
positive gram positive bacilli. Yeah. And now coming on to the gram negative, similarly we have gram negative cocci and gram negative bacilli. Again, as I said already, if the cocci are in chain, they are called as staphylococcus, and the cocci are in cluster, streptococcus. If they are in chains, they are streptococcus. If they are in clusters, they are called staphylococcus. Okay, based on which we can have the two different classification. And bacilli have some important property, like we can leave this spore forming property. Okay, just no need to remember this examples. What many examples are? No need to remember all this. Okay, you just remember gram positive cocci and gram positive bacilli. Just remember one or two bacteria name for cocci. That is, you can remember streptococcus and staphylococcus. Okay, staphylococcus are clusters, streptococcus are chains. In case of bacilli, two bacteria you can remember: lactobacillus and E. coli. E. coli is a well-known bacteria for bacilli. E. coli is a gram negative bacteria. Remember one example for gram positive and gram negative bacteria. Example for gram negative bacteria is E. coli. Okay, and in case of gram positive bacteria, it is like staphylococcus or streptococcus. You can remember. So you just have a table which is common, like staphylococcus is common for cocci as well as a gram positive. Bacilli, E. coli is a negative bacteria, and lactobacillus is a gram positive bacteria. Okay, so these are the example. In case of gram negative, you have the gram negative cocci. It is Neisseria. Okay, you can remember this one example for this. And again, the gram negative rods and bacilli. Example, like again, the bacilli are classified based upon the morphology, whether they are medium size or small size. The Coccobacilli, there is a term used. This Coccobacilli are bacterial cells which has the feature of both the spherical or oval shape as well as the bacilli shape. So we cannot able to clearly distinguish whether they are appearing as a cocci as well as a bacilli, the rod shape. So that's why their name has been given as Coccobacilli, because they have the both shape. It's a oval elongated bacteria which resembles like a spear as well as like a rod. So that's why it is called like this. So with this, I will stop today and we will discuss like whatever the doubts you have. Okay. So I'm stopping here and I'm closing the recording also.
Sir, will the PDF will be available in the files